return of I Dread. This is the return of I Dread, Spiffington.
Hello, R users. This is not the return that I dread. This is the return that I'm looking forward to. My name is John Kulas. I am a 20-year professor of industrial and organizational psychology. I'm a 5-second player of this bottle cap here. I got to put it away, otherwise it's going to distract me. And I'm for the last 10, 11, 12 years I've been using R primarily for analytical purposes. That's how I kind of got into R, as most people do. But for the majority of that 10 or 11 years, now I'd say 8 or 9 years, I've also been using R to fully execute projects. So not just to do the analytical part of a project, but to do the summary of the project as well. So to write it up and to envelop everything within the same platform, so you can author where you do your analyses. And so every week I get together here and hang out on Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock for roughly an hour, so roughly 7 to 8 every week. We do some other things on this channel too, but this is kind of what it's evolved into. I enjoy it, and so I think we'll keep doing this for a while. So I don't know how much other content I'm going to be putting out anytime soon, but every week we'll be here on these live stream sessions. And when I say we, it's me and some people who are working on projects with me who also have some experience and interest in doing this. And so we're here just to kind of spread the good word of single platform project execution, and to expand people's perspective on these platforms. They're not merely analytical platforms. You can do traditional word processing within them. For example, you can author slides. Like you don't need to go to PowerPoint. You don't need Microsoft for any of this stuff. And so we're here and we hang out, just if there's anyone else out there who's interested in doing this, and maybe just you're not quite sure how to get started, or maybe you're already doing something and just want some ideas, or maybe you're stuck on something and just want to chat with somebody about why you're stuck, or maybe some ways to get around that stuckiness. So we're here every week. And our main purpose here is, again, to be a resource, an available interactive resource in kind of this Q&A back and forth kind of format. We use the analogy of an academic office hour. That's the OOH, stands for open office hours. And we're literally just here if someone wants to pop by and ask a question. Now, in the absence of that, And I'm not sure YouTube is the best forum for that anyway, but we're going to keep trying. And so if you happen to see this and you pop by and you are interested in something, just drop a comment and we'll try to address that on the spot. But in the absence of that happening, what we've been doing is we've been taking a focal issue one at a time, and kind of exploring them. And last week, well, so last week, the focal issue that I decided we would take a look at is a diagram capability that isn't native to the authoring software that we've been using. So I say using R to author. That's a bit of a there's truth to it. So when I first started doing this, I was using an R package called R Markdown, and that's something that kind of had alignment with that language. Currently, the way that the thing that's facilitating the creation of these products that we're looking at is a piece of software called Quarto. And so really what we're using to author is Quarto. And Quarto doesn't care if you use R for your analytical engine or not. But when I say R for authoring, I'm kind of also, I guess I'm being a little unfair to Quarto, which is really the engine that powers much of what we do here every week. So anyway, so last week we got derailed a little bit because for the first time on these weekly live streams, I think it was the first time we needed this. We needed a secondary piece of software. That is, we're testing a capability that doesn't come bundled with Quarto. We're testing a capability that has its own set of developers and developments and support that's going on outside of Quarto. But there's someone that is interested in that and wants to make it accessible to Quarto. And so that happens all the time. What doesn't happen all the time is the dependency of the software for the thing that we're trying to integrate. And so last week we got stuck on just trying to get the software. So we'll cover that in a second here. But I think I have a solution this week. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue what happened last week. Last week, there wasn't a lot of progress last week. So hopefully we'll overcome our obstacle and then we'll get into it and see what this D2 diagram issue is all about here. Okay, so let's get our segue here into what actually did happen last week.
Well, last time we left things in a pretty pickle indeed. General Broadbeam was in the guardhouse taking an examination to see if he was sentenced to the jute mill or the rock pile. The villainous Mr. Big was alone in a vault full of precious obsidian, and our heroes, Rocky and Bullwinkle, had just been placed in front of a sinister-looking wall by none other than Boris Badenov, disguised as...
General Badenov, please. Okay, boys? Left face, ready, aim, fire!
A volley of rifle shots rang out, and our boys would have been in a bad way but for one thing. In ordering left face, Boris had pointed them in the wrong direction.
So last week we ran into our own issues. It wasn't quite as bad as, I guess, the pickle that Rocky and Bullwinkle are in. It is funny, though, how there's some ambiguity in terms of the framing of the situations that they're in. But oftentimes, and I'm just grabbing these in sequence, from the literal sequence from episode 1 to episode 2 to episode 3 that happened in the 1950s. I think it's the 50s, might be the 60s, late 50s, early 60s. But there is always some like relevant bit of what's happening to Rocky and Bullwinkle that seems to be happening to us. So last week we were in a pickle as well. And our pickle had to do with just getting the software that we needed in order to test out the thing that we wanted to test out in Quarto. And so I guess it's a good time, I guess, to talk about philosophy a little bit. My philosophy on this channel is to be fully transparent when those sorts of issues arise, so that we can collectively see that happens and see how we overcome them. So anyway, last week it wasn't an R issue, it wasn't a Quarto issue, it was this secondary piece of software that we need, and we didn't resolve it. So this week, I think, hopefully this week will be a little more calm and soothing, and everything's gonna be okay. So let me see if I have a everything's gonna be. I don't think I have an everything's gonna be okay drop. I have a lots of stuff is going wrong drops, but I don't have an everything is okay drop. It's an oldie but a goodie. But we got good old Bob Ross here caressing a fawn, a baby deer. And so that, I think, that is consistent with our feelings and thoughts and kind of our orientation tonight. I think everything's going to be okay. So we'll overcome what happened last week, and we will, I do have some confidence that we'll be able to explore this capability within the authoring platform that we've been using, which is called Quarto. So version 2 is just, version 1 was kind of a bust. So version 1 was stalling on the software installation. Again, there's a link to these slides in the comments. Again, I'm not 100% sure on this, but I believe if you watch this, not live, but after we're done here in an hour or so, those comments, I guess, are not, my understanding is those comments don't always populate and aren't always available. So what I try to do as well is, if you look in the description of the video, there should be a duplicate hyperlink in the description. So if you happen to stumble across this early and you don't see the hyperlink to the slides in the comments, just look in the description. And I think I've been pretty good about remembering to do that. There's also some kind of boilerplate stuff in there I saw that I didn't put that in. Like, I think StreamYard puts that in. There's some financial incentive if you click the link. I can't vouch for that. I get nothing from it. I don't know why it's there. I just saw that it was when I was looking at an older video. Okay. So there are hyperlinks that are hidden here. Sometimes there's some visual cues, sometimes there aren't. Maybe one of these weeks, that's something that I can cover, is how to maximize these visual cues that you see here upon hover. And I don't, honestly, I played quite a bit with those hyperlinks this week just to make them different from last week in terms of the resources that you have access to. And this one right over the R2 section of the diagram, this one goes to D2, the software system itself, and shows you some of its capabilities. Whereas on the right, this is one big hyperlink from VIA to the Quarto symbol to version 2. That will take you to the repository that tells you how to access, oh no, I'm sorry, strike that. That's what it used to do. This one takes you to this one, no, it does. Yeah, D2R, I think, is what we're actually going to be using. Yeah, so this does take to not the installation page of the Quarto extension, but to a page that describes somewhat the philosophy and kind of the whole idea behind the package. And there is some installation information in here as well, but there's basic usage information. There's some examples of capabilities on here as well. So it gets a little more detailed than I think what we had previously, which was just an installation page. Okay, so in terms of, by the way, there was no breakthrough here. I found this nice picture of R2D2, and he was breaking through. So that's all breakthrough stands for. I mean, I think I figured it out, but I wouldn't necessarily label that as a breakthrough if we didn't have the nice visual to go with it. So last week, I think what happened, and I consulted with my brother on this. So my brother's a computer guy, does computer stuff, and he took a look at kind of our options here in terms of where we were trying to access the download that we needed for our computer. And I'm running a Windows machine. I'm still on Windows 10. And so that was one possibility for what went wrong. But some of the other recommendations that I was following, online recommendations, were saying to use these TARGZ extension downloads. And so I think what happened, what my brother thinks happened, and we're still not sure about this, um, but what we think happened here is that there's a secondary zip or third-party zip capability that you need if you're interacting with these tar.gz type files. So this isn't going to natively extract, given what comes bundled with Windows, and so we're thinking that's what happened. Now we did get these extracted, and we did actually. There's tons of information there, a little too much, shows a little information overload. If we look back at the recommendations here in terms of one, consulting with my brother, but then also two, kind of testing this out on a second computer. So I did test this out on my laptop, and everything worked fine. Again, the orientation of this weekly session is not to have a tidy, neat, bundled kind of tutorial on how to do stuff. This is working. So this is live coding. This is making mistakes and overcoming mistakes. So I didn't do anything on this computer since last week. So we'll see if it works. I did test it out though. I did do a little more groundwork, leg work than I normally would, just because it's got to be brutal just watching somebody not not able to install software. So if you did watch that last week, thank you. Thanks for bearing with me. I appreciate it. But hopefully we won't have too much of that this week. So the first, and these are just the steps that I took on the laptop. So the first one is to not use those TARGZ extension options on the download, but to use the MSI, which should be recognized by Windows and should actually extract what we need in terms of the application. Now, I guess I should make a caveat here. If you're on a Mac, sorry, I guess, because the only option on a Mac are these TARGZs. Now, it might on a Mac, maybe these are more easily accessible. I do know that I make fun of Mac people sometimes, just because as a professor teaching R, students with Macs those were the most problematic problem solves with basic setup information. Where's my files information? And so me and some of my friends, we sometimes make fun of Macs, but only in a kidding manner. What I can say is that most of the developers and most of the people that are really contributing to these authoring platforms and just even support systems with R itself, they all seem to use Macs. So Macs, I know, are very popular in this general arena, in this general domain of using R as an authoring system. So what we're gonna walk through today is Windows specific. So sorry about that. Again, last week I talked about it, but it's good to repeat this week. This is not typical. So this is not a basic. This is not a fundamental. This is not a introductory level thing to explore. This is a more intermediate to advanced thing to explore. Not because of the content, but because of the steps necessary in order to access and activate and use this capability. So this is still being very actively worked upon and developed, and so this really we're working with something that doesn't have a lot of that doesn't have a long history of or a long tradition of use and application. So we're going to do it regardless. And the other caveat there, I guess I should make, is the reason I'm mentioning this is I don't recommend you, if you're an introductory level R user, someone who's just started using R to author, take a look at what I'm doing here and see if it interests you. But I think we'll have time tonight, and I'll show you some alternatives to using D2. Now, if D2 turns out to just kind of blow our socks off and you want to use it, hopefully you'll find something good here too. But again, this, just given the problems I had last week, this is not something I would generally recommend to people as kind of a first introduction to using diagrams within Quarto or R authored documents. Okay, so we're going to access that MSI extension download. We're going to find where it puts it. So on my laptop, what happened was just accessing that file itself. It was fully executable and it made a D2 application. Then we're going to create a project folder within RStudio. So the IDE I'm using is RStudio. You don't need to be using RStudio, but in terms of using D2, we're going to want to have a project folder. We're going to want to make sure that what we're doing is in the same location as the application itself. And the easiest way to do that is probably just to specify a project folder. You could also just run your R session within the folder that the application is located. So if we create a project folder, which is my recommendation, again, based on one time getting this to work, then we're going to take that application and paste it within that project folder, and then we should be good to go. So then at that point, we're going to access the extension like we normally would. That extension is going to be activated within the YAML of our document here by the use of the filter command. And then there's some other specifications that we have. So the chunk specifications that we're going to give within our document itself that tells it that this is a diagram, not an R script, not a Python script, not a bit of CSS, which the main ones we've been talking about on this channel are R chunks and CSS chunks, but we're going to have hopefully a D2 chunk. And you can see the actual command specification is fairly easy. Now I put, those of you, if you want to kind of skip ahead here while I go through the installation, I did put a hyperlink in on this note that gives you a good kind of preview of some of the capabilities of D2. And I'm going to come back to this, but if you don't want to watch me flounder through the installation, you might want to play with that, or maybe have it open in a second window. So, okay, let's see if we can do all these steps. I'm actually going to snip this. I wrote it, but I'm going to snip it just to give myself a little reminder here of the steps that we're going to go through. Because as soon as I go to these download pages, I'm going to lose the sequence of steps. All right, so everybody cross your fingers. Here we're trying to see if we can actually use the proper download link here. So this MSI extension is the one that we want. It's my downloads folder. I'm going to go ahead and open that. There we go. This is where we stalled last week. We did not get to this point. And again, so the key seemed to be that MSI extension on a Windows-based machine. Now, everything just went away. My hope is that D2 is now going to be located somewhere on my computer. By the way, I'm not... This Marie Antoinette thing that you see has to do with a fantasy football league, believe it or not. So I don't have some weird I do have a weird fascination with cartoons, but not like Renaissance era, like French ladies who get their heads chopped off. Okay, so I'm actually going to look in I could do a Windows Explorer search. I'm going to look at my program files. Yes, there it is. So I get a D2 folder. This is new. This was not here. I guess I should have shown that. So I'm going to, again, I'm following my recommendations here that I used on my laptop. So I'm going to find the application. I guess if we follow, I found it. So it's on my program files directory. If I follow the steps here, I'm going to create a project folder within RStudio. There's the little raccoon guy who's still frustrated from last week. Let's create a new project in a new directory. And I put most of my projects off my root directory. I have a Kulas folder. I'm not that vain, honestly. It's just a tradition that I started in graduate school many years ago. I think it was when I shared a lab computer with other students. And so I have a Git folder where most of my projects are. That's what you're looking at here. But I don't want to do that. I want to put this actually, well, I should put it someplace where I can find it within within my kind of system here. So I do have a couple profiles here. I'm going to go to the profile that I have been saving stuff at, and we'll call this, we'll call it R2D2, since I guess that's the metaphor we've been using for D2. Whoops, what did I do? Oh, I must have, we want to, oh, it wanted to create a directory. It wanted the location, not the name. So again, I don't usually go through this process. Usually I do connect to GitHub. And so there it's putting it where we want it, and the name here I give here. So we'll call it R2D2 as a directory name here. Now if we were connecting to a Git repository, the name, the suggested name would be auto-populated, and that's kind of why I got confused there. The other thing is this is not a location I typically use. So there it is on my C drive in the users directory, ERG admin desktop R2D2. So if we follow our snip directions, so let's see, we did this, we did this, we did this, cut application and locate within project folder. So I'm going to use Windows Explorer. This is where we found it before. Go ahead and cut it. You can probably copy it as well. I don't know if multiple versions of this have any effect on your computer. And I'm going to try to find where we made our project. And again, I got a lot of junk on this computer. There's R2D2. So I'm going to put the application within the R. Kulas, what are you doing? You named the project something very, very similar to the software. So that was not smart, was it? I should not have done that.
Come out of there, you bladder spitting as a trapper all!
I'm going to start playing those more often if I can, just because I got a bunch of them. If they get annoying, drop me a note, and maybe I can restrain myself somewhat. Okay, so D2 is now in R2D2. Sorry for the confusion. It's kind of self-inflicted there. But now we're going to use this example script with YAML specs. And that example script is actually in this week's slides. And again, this is very unwieldy. So again, I'm not recommending anyone really do this. I'll admit something here. Maybe I shouldn't. I was kind of going to keep this as just a little secret that only I know, but there aren't that many people here anyway tonight, so I think I can share it. 3 weeks ago, we did a back to basics, and I said we called them the ABCs. So my plan here, my little secret plan, back of my head, was that I was going to keep on going with the alphabet every week until maybe somebody noticed. And I just gave up kind of my whole trick. But so one of the reasons we're doing D2 is just because it's a continuation of the ABCs, which is a really ridiculous and not very well thought out reason to do something. Anyway, if we get this to work tonight, next week look for an E something or other. So what I want to do here is I want to go to my sample script, and I'm going to copy that. The other thing we need to do is we need to access the extension, the Quarto extension, and place that within our project directory here. And now the way that we've been doing that, and again, I believe that there should be some hyperlinks on this week's slides. So let's go to, let's see if we can find, it's probably this one here on the second slide. Of course it's not. Oh, you know what? We did have a link. This has got it. I'm just thinking about students sitting in class and the professor is fumbling around to find something, and the students have to be thinking, well, didn't you do that? Isn't this yours? Didn't you come up with this? How can you not find it? And that's kind of what's going on now. I did create this, and I can't find what I'm looking for. what I was looking for is accessible on this hyperlink here, either using via or using the Quarto symbol. I'm sorry, that is the Quarto symbol, or using version 2. These all hyperlink, I believe, to the same. Oh, I must have 3 hyperlinks on there. Sorry. So actually use via or Quarto. So use the via or Quarto symbol, and that will take you to the GitHub repository that walks you through the installation of the Quarto extension that facilitates the creation of D2 diagrams within a Quarto document. Crying out loud. Okay, so it only took us 2 weeks, but yes, we have D2 installed on our system. Then I'm going to run this command to add the extension to our project directory. Now these commands, you run these in the terminal of your R session. Now if you don't have a terminal tab and you're in RStudio, you can go to Tools and just get a terminal. I have my RStudio set up such that there's a terminal tab available. I use this quite a bit when we use GitHub repositories to store our projects. We always trust the authors. We're very trustworthy people. I don't know if we should or not. This, would you like to continue because changes are going to be made? These changes are typically the way we've been using them. These changes are just, there's a new thing that's going in this folder. Documentation, boy, we really should probably get in a better habit of doing that. But we didn't. There we go. So I was a little worried there for a second because it looked like the extensions folder did not come in, but it looks now like it did. So within my project directory, I have this _extensions folder, and that should give us access to everything we need to do in order to run a D2 diagram within a Quarto document. Whew. All right. You think we got there? Does anyone have confidence that maybe we did this right this time? So I'm going to open a Quarto document. We'll do an HTML file because those tend to be the most forgiving. You know, I should have a Darth Vader drop for forgiving because that's a great Darth Vader phrase. And we do kind of have the Star Wars theme this week. I think the only Vader drop I have is this one.
What?
It's a good one, but forgiving. The Emperor is not as forgiving as I am. It's kind of what I was thinking. So we'll just do a standard HTML file. We can call it R2D2 because everything else is called R2D2, so why not be more confusing? We'll call this the paper to be a little less confusing. I'm going to render that, and again, my recommendation is always, I feel like Mel Brooks here. R2D2, the paper, the sequel. My recommendation is always to render these documents fresh before you do anything, just to make sure that your system's set up to use them. Let's put a picture of R2D2 or Vader in there before we do any diagrams. I like Darth Vader. He's nice and evil. Nice and evil. That sounds like a shampoo, doesn't it? Nice and evil. This one's kind of spooky. With AI, so I'm just right-clicking, copying the image. With AI, I'm curious what I see, whether these are images that are from something that's legit or not. Now it's coming in as a kind of weird, there's no extension on it. This has been happening more and more frequently, that it's hard to get a sense of what that object actually is in terms of the format of the image itself. But anyway, Vader's there. That's not the point of this week. He does look intimidating and scary. So, all right. So Vader's up there encouraging us to get this D2 diagram to work. Thank you, Lord Vader. We'll try to do your bidding. So if we go back to... I think I lost my slides. Let's let's go back to the slides. And the reason I got to type it is from the platform I'm using, the hyperlinks work a little different for me than they do for you. I'm not sure why that is. But the reason I want the slides is because I had this sample code here. And this sample code gives me the YAML. It also gives me, well, I guess I wrote this, check out the neat diagram. But it gives me access to a diagram itself. I'm going to try to leave this open now. And let's paste. I'm gonna paste into. I'm not gonna paste the whole thing because it's only a little bit that I want here. Now the default format for these files is HTML, so we probably don't need that line 3 specification. But this filters D2 should be able to look in our extensions folder and find D2 itself. This I'm going to leave, we'll come back to this, but I'm going to leave it for now. And then we will put in a code chunk and see if we get a D2 diagram. Let's get rid of some of this. Where'd Vader go? Boy, he wouldn't like it if he were called Quarto, I don't think. So let's call him Vader the Great. And I'm just going to leave this as it's currently specified, and we'll see if it throws an error or if it gives us anything. Nice. Nice. Oh my goodness. We actually got it. We got it. We got it. Now we'll probably crash into a sign. I do have a motorcycle. I haven't driven it all summer because I've been waiting on a part. A part had to come from England, and everybody in the U.S. apparently was out of this part. To the extent that the parts person, the parts person in Minnesota didn't have it, Cleveland didn't have it, Chicago didn't have it. Milwaukee parts person told me she doesn't know why Triumph, the brand of the motorcycle I have, hasn't issued a recall because everybody's looking for the part. So anyway, if I ever get it going, hopefully that doesn't happen to me because that looked painful. But look at this nice diagram. I love it. I like it. I mean, it looks cartoony a little bit. It's nice. All right, let's see if we can get this. Let's do a few things with this. And the few thing, I'm overly excited here. I'm overly stimulated. So I think the first thing we want to do is we want to take a look at this playground that I have linked on this week's slides. So the playground is going to take you to, it looks like it's auto-populate, sorry. So all of this gobbledygook at the end of the URL is from me. So this is me playing with these images. And now there's a bunch of stuff that we can do without really knowing the scripting. So one of the reasons this might be a little intimidating is you're going to need a different language. This language does not look that terrible, however. So what I'm looking for is some script specification that might alter this a little bit. Now, one of the things that our diagram is doing is it's vertical, and so the first thing that a psychologist might be interested in, we deal with conceptual models that are presented visually like this, and this would be classified as what we call a mediation model. So y would be a mediator variable between the outcome z and the predictor or independent variable x, and we would actually alter those letters a little bit. Let's do that. But so anyway, conceptually, by convention, by tradition, we prefer left to right. And so one thing I'm curious to see is if we can just kind of make that. Now in the D2 language, I don't know if this is going to work in Quarto, but in the D2 scripting platform, the command to change the directionality of this figure is just located semantically right above the actual figure specification itself. And I'm really tempted to change Y to Z and Z to Y. But we'll do that next if this works. So I'm going to try to render that, see if we throw an error. Look at that. It worked. Honestly, I didn't expect it to work. Now, it did render a lot smaller. And I do have this width specification in here. I'm curious, that is not a command that typically I use within Quarto documents. It looks to me like they're using regular Quarto commands, but it's possible that these are specific for D2 itself. There we go. So if we just bump it up, it gets a lot bigger. And there's my script, and I can copy that script if I want. Now, one of the things that happens in this playground that I have access to is there's all kinds of modifications that you can make here. This colon and then text. What I saw when I was playing with D2 was this colon and text is going to label the arrows on my diagram here. Let's put Vader below that. He's a little too intimidating. Like if I were an XYZ graph, I would be intimidated by Vader. All right, so I did a few things. I changed Z. I made that the mediating variable to a psychologist, and then Y, X, and Y. There's all kinds of reasons for this. One of them is the two-dimensional graphing convention, where your Y-axis has DV information and your X-axis has IV information. But conventionally, we like to structure things like this. My expectation is, first of all, Y and Z will be reversed here, but secondly, I'm going to get some text on these. I believe it's on the arrows, if this works. So if this works, it's actually pretty impressive in terms of what we're seeing in capabilities on the online playground for D2 and how they're transitioning straight to just a standard Quarto document. I'm going to turn that echo off and see if that operates as we expect. The width operated great. We've gotten in the habit now of, instead of enclosing these in fences, we've been using chunk commands. Now, I'm guessing this is not going to work. And the reason I'm guessing this is not going to work is we've seen with different types of chunks, this comment hash pipe line differs. So if you'll notice the hash pipe itself, the hash mark or the pound sign is the R notation for a comment. And so across these different platforms, what seems to be preferred is this phrase, the symbol phrase changes based on the type of chunk that we're working within. We'll see what happens. Looks the same. It didn't work. So if we have time, we'll check that out. The way that I used to structure these in R Markdown, which this looks more like R Markdown just kind of visually, is we used commas. Now there's no commas being used here. But I'm curious if commas are actually going to work. No, it doesn't like commas. Okay. So there might be some peculiarities here to these D2 chunks. Just to make sure things aren't messed up, let's go ahead and put in just an R chunk here. Make sure that's still operative. We'll put echo true on that. So we see it. Then we'll just use the standard addition convention here. So 6 plus 4. So let's see if that's echoed, and then we get a result on that as well. Yeah, that looks fine. So there's no reason for there to be any interference. I don't know why I was even curious about that. But okay, so let's play with this a little bit. So we don't have as much time as I was kind of hoping. But within this playground, one of the things we can do is we can just take any one of these examples and look for something that looks interesting. SQL table. We have enough diagrammy stuff. I'm not sure we need that. Let's just take one. So I'm going to copy just a random one here. I'm going to put it in the live editor in the playground. And again, there's a link to this in the slides this week. That's not that interesting. Let's look for a different one. What is this? Total abstinence? These people, I'd like to see who the developers are here, and I'm just cutting and pasting. Okay, so there's some information here. Now in this, I am getting some information upon hover. So this information, so it's a tooltip. So it looks like X is being defined, Y is being defined, and then it's giving the diagram direction. But these tooltips in the curly brackets are identifiable upon hover. Now the other thing that we have here, we've been using elk. And so I'm not seeing a whole lot of difference here between these different layout engines. It does look like there's a slightly different rendering in terms of size, location, kind of the look of things relative to other things does seem to be changing. I don't know what these are. So I did see that our grape soda theme, and again, these must be some interesting people just given the names that they've chosen to give to things. This looks like it primarily just changes the color scheme, which I don't know if there's much. Ooh, I like that Everglade. Let's see if we can do Everglade. And this isn't the YAML. What is it? Everglade what? Kiln? These are some weird people. Everglade. No, sorry, I don't mean that. They're great people. I love you. I think I also read that this is maybe not case sensitive as a language. So it didn't like Everglade clean. Oh, I spelled it wrong. Everglad. Everglad sounds friendlier anyway, doesn't it? Ever so glad. Maybe it is case sensitive, so try lowercase g. I cannot spell tonight. Everglade green. Doesn't like Everglade glean. I can't. My goodness. Cool classics. Let's try that. I'm not sure how many of these it's going to actually have access to. We know it has access to grape. Let's see if we can just comment this out and see what it comes in as default. Default doesn't look all that different than grape, does it? I guess the boxes, the outlines are blue. Before they were kind of a little more muted. Okay, so let's go back here and let's take this. Let's take our tooltips and see if that renders within Quarto. I'm going to leave the chunk commands as they are. We'll just see if it's able to look at that. So I'm not sure we're going to get the hover. This is an HTML document, but it looks like we're not getting the hover. So we'll see if that's... I'm inspecting to see if there's any sort of information in here that's hidden. There's content visibility hidden. So it looks like it's probably there. We might have to play with that a little more in order to order to... No, something weird just happened there. I saw a box around my link, which is something that I'm not used to seeing. So the information about hover, that might not be right out of the box available. Let's see what else we have here. Let's try a different... I'm a Mac and I'm a PC. Let's see what that looks like. Gesundheit? Somebody with a sense... These people have a good sense of humor. I like that. Now the links, the hyperlinks, again, the interactivity to me looks like... I keep hitting the wrong button. Sorry about that. The interactivity to me looks like it might not quite be there in terms of porting over. But certainly the diagrams themselves are. We can try this in different HTML format. There's no reason to think that the interactivity is going to be better here, but we can see what this looks like. Now I probably have too much content on one slide. It's probably going to bleed over. So let's go ahead and make this a separate. Or, you know what, we can get rid of the silly Lord Vader approves. And probably get rid of the echo because that's going to eat up some of our head space as well here. And it's still bleeding over on the page. So let's see if we get any different view with some of these other options. So the PDF export's coming through pretty well. Oh, poor Vader's down there too. We got to give him his own slide. So second level heading is first or second level heading is the specification for a new slide within these Reveal.js slides. Let's see if we can change the orientation of that such that it's easier to see. Now the command there was just direction right. We'll see if this works again. Now the hope is that that'll switch. No, it just didn't like it. So it did not like that with this type of specification. Maybe it's something that can happen in the YAML itself or in the chunk commands. I'm going to change it back to an HTML file so we don't have to monkey too much with some of the constrictions of specifically a slide type format. What else do we have here? Code blocks. We should try LaTeX. We should probably try LaTeX and see if that works. Sequence diagrams. Again, I'm kind of curious about some of the capabilities here because we've tried the two diagramming capabilities that come bundled with Quarto, and those are Mermaid and Graphviz. Hey, that's kind of cool. I like that one. What does it mean to be well adjusted? Alice says to Bob, what does it mean to be well adjusted? Bob says to Alice, the ability to play bridge or golf as if they were games. What the heck? Alice. If I were Alice, I don't know if I would like that. I want a divorce. I don't know if this will work. We'll see if it works. Hey, look. Alice wants a divorce now. That comes through fine. I'm not going to keep going with this because I probably get myself in trouble with Alice and Bob here. It does look like, you know, what if we add a third person? That's going to blow this up, I'm guessing, in the sequence. Let's see if we can get someone to the right of Bob here. So Bob says to his mistress, I really should have stopped. Woohoo! Bob had secret plans all along. Hey, look at that. Okay, well, let's see if Alice can talk to the mistress. Now, I didn't test any of this out. Ooh, hussy. Does anyone say hussy anywhere? I wonder if we can put pictures on there. I like that. I mean, I feel sorry for Alice and Bob, but I kind of like how that looks in terms of rendering. Alice says to Bob, what does it mean to be well adjusted? Bob says to Alice, the ability to play bridge or golf as if they were games. Alice wants a divorce. Bob says, woohoo to his mistress. You hussy. We don't know what the mistress says yet or not. I don't know. Maybe she was okay with the previous arrangement. All right, anyway, I didn't expect to go there with tonight's diagrams. Doritos and Ruffles. Let's see what these are. And then maybe the last thing we'll do is take a look and see how these contrast with the two native Mermaid and Graphviz type diagrams. Those are cool looking. I like that. Kind of nested boxes. You know, I haven't been, as we're looking at this, hopefully some of you are thinking about ways in which you might want to incorporate this into your own work. I have not been thinking that. I've honestly just been kind of playing with just what it looks like. I don't know if it's an optical illusion, but it looks like those inner boxes are slightly different shade than the outer boxes. I don't know if it matters, but I don't see anything in these specifications that would make it so. I'm curious if we can kind of add those directions like they have. If we wanted to do a true kind of conceptual diagram. So I'm wondering if we'll get arrows here now. Again, I don't know this language. Oh, we do, but they were... Okay, I see. So I wasn't looking at the diagram enough. We did get our arrows, so that's easy enough. It's just the So there's some internal logic here in terms of the objects that are being created. That's pretty neat, actually. I could see myself... Classes, it's relevant for us since we talk about learning. Ooh, there's a lot in that one. It's nice to know that this capability is actually there. And it's, like I said, it's being developed, it's being worked on. That's cool looking. It looked like there's quite a bit of... This almost looks like CSS in terms of... I don't know if they're naming this. I'm guessing they're naming Shiny Orb. I'm guessing it's not a native... yeah, it doesn't look like this comes packaged with D2. It looks like they're defining it here. If we gave it a label, I imagine that might pop up here in our graph. So that's pretty cool. I mean, so this is quite intuitive. Actually, I don't know anything about it, and we're playing with it here. Curious if it takes hexadecimal colors, so we'll do our traditional badass. That's like a kind of a... didn't like that. We'll see if it likes it in quotes or double quotes. And if not, maybe we'll just try like a... Oh, it does. Okay. So double quotes are the way to get that. That is cool. The shadow itself is coming through... I don't know if there's any way that we could affect that or change that, but there's, again, some internal logic that says that's what a shadow should look like. That is pretty daggone cool. Markdown. LaTeX I was interested in, so let's take a look at this. And we could combine all these, and again, I'm copying what other people have done here instead of coming up with their own thing, since we don't know this language. That is cool. Plankton will steal. I like these people. I'm gonna have to figure out who these people are and maybe send them a birthday card or something. I like what they're doing. So this LaTeX, we should be able to play with that if we want. I use LaTeX quite a bit, so I know quite a few of these commands. We should be able to change where it says H to 0 down here. We should be able to change that to, we can make it like Greek letter, alpha, or a koga if you prefer. That's what happens when your hand's not in the right spot. Yeah, and it read that fine. So now we have a H to alpha. What's being plotted here, I'm not quite sure what it is. I've been trying to kind of use my cursor around this a little bit, and there's definitely, there aren't individual elements that I can isolate here with my cursor. But I can't select anything either. So if I control A, it looks to me like it's just a massive, what we have here in terms of the rendering is just a massive block. Now we can see if this will also work as a PDF. Let's try Typist first. So Typist is kind of the PDF Lite, or it's PDF that doesn't require the intermediate step of of creating a text file. It says it successfully did it, but it's also given me a bunch of issues. Looks to me like the main issue is actually with Vader. So let's get Vader out of there. I mean, you don't want to have an issue with Vader. You'd chop your head right off. Okay, so yeah, didn't like Vader. Again, that URL that we copied didn't specify the image type, so it must have had something to do with the image type, but that looks fantastic in a typist document. See, Vader, we're still giving you homage. We're still saying you're awesome, even though we're not including you. Now, you can see now in the PDF, I can access some of this individual information. I wonder if I can... so the formula itself looks like it's coming in as an image because I can't copy individual elements off of that. But the text I can actually go ahead and copy. Let's try it as a PDF, a traditional PDF. Now, when I say intermediate steps, what you're going to see here in terms of my files within my project folders, you'll see a .tex extension. I don't know why I have two PDFs here. That's a little weird. I'm not sure why that is. The first time we did it, there may have been some odd mistake that happened. No, the other thing that might be happening here is I've never seen this progression of Tetris lines coming across my screen like this. I don't know what's going on. Like I use PDF. I generate quite a few PDF files using text specifications, but I've literally never seen that. That was bizarre. What is that? What are you doing here, thing? Chromium. All right. The PDF compiler wanted something else. I've never needed it. I've never heard of it. It looks kind of cool. Again, if I didn't ruin my computer by downloading D2, I might have just ruined it by installing Chromium, whatever the heck that is. Okay, well actually I'm starting to lose my voice a little bit, so I don't think we will contrast it with the native diagramming capabilities. But all in all, a success. So sorry for the stall last week, but again, part of the point of doing these and doing them live is, you know, seeing obstacles and overcoming them. It's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get up, right? It's an old boxing axiom. I think it's a good one. So, all right. So next week, be on the lookout for something starting with the letter E. Unless I hear from any of you and you have any suggestions and there's anything you want to see, I'll try to find something more kind of less advanced level. Like I said, I would consider this to be you have some experience with these authoring platforms, you've been using them for a while, and you're just trying to test out the capabilities. That's not the intent of these weekly shows. yes, I want to test out capabilities, but not ones that have requirements and dependencies and installations and things like that. So next week, I think I'll just look for something that starts with the letter E that doesn't require a separate software installation. But I'm glad we took a look, and there are some neat things here. And this is something that I'm glad to know that it exists as a capability within these documents. We can use it within HTML files. We can use it within PDF files. And the renderings look great. Like, these images are really sharp. The imagery itself is bright and vibrant, and it just looks great. So glad we took a look. All right, everybody. See you next week.